Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 10-game Major League Baseball slate. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It helps the channel a lot. Really do appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get into the slate. So we do have some core plays in Candelario for Cincinnati, Bregman for Houston, and Rep Snyder for Boston. I'll get into those when I get to those position players. Let's go ahead and get into our pitchers, though. So pitching is kind of weird today. I think a lot of teams have a good opportunity to have a really solid game. I don't expect pitching to be super high scoring today, whereas I do think the bats are going to be higher scoring on the slate. Hang on one second. All right, so with that said, we do have 6 pitchers that I think are good GPP plays, and then we have 3 kind of extreme GPP options. So we'll start here with Pivetta for Boston against Oakland. Now, he's not got as high of a K rate as I'd like for a 9,000 plus price player or pitcher, but he does have some positive matchup here, and he has had some ups and downs throughout the season. A 15 to 25 fantasy point game is definitely the most likely here, and he's got some upside. Though I do think that the Oakland A's can hit a couple home runs in this one, so he's not a must play by any stretch of imagination. Looking at Valdez for Houston, he's a very interesting play today against Miami. He's got a plus matchup here. The only downside here really is his K rate, but it's a good matchup, and he's got pretty good potential. And aside from Jazz Chisholm Jr., I think that there's not too much risk for Miami to do too much in this particular game. I also think Logan Webb has some utility today for San Francisco, though he has a iffy matchup against Toronto. He has a decent. He has been really good over the last 11 games. He's had at least 15 fantasy points in every single one, so he's got a pretty safe floor. Though he doesn't have the highest of ceilings, and his K rate is not all that particularly great. So I think he has a good potential here, but he's going to be lower owned, and that's going to give him some upside here as well. Looking at Chris Bassett for Toronto, he's got a favorable matchup against San Francisco. He has struggled some this season versus good teams, but he has a fairly good average against very good play against average teams, and he's going to have a good potential here. Though he is a little bit riskier than some of the other players on this slate. Tobias Myers from Milwaukee has an interesting matchup against Pittsburgh. Now Pittsburgh does have some guys that can hit, but he has been inconsistent. But he has a better floor than some, and he's a GPP play here. But there is a little bit of risk involved. And then we're going to look at Charlie Morton. Now Charlie Morton is in a very interesting situation today against Arizona. The Braves have been playing pretty well lately, and his streak of every other game being awesome has continued for quite a few games now. And if that was to continue, then he would have a very good game today again. As you can see, it's going all the way back to maybe the beginning of May against the Dodgers, and then he's just been every other game been close to 20 or more fantasy points. So if that holds today, then he will do that again. And so I do like his potential here from that perspective, but he is a high risk, high reward play. He's actually got one of the better strikeout rates on this entire slate, though, so he's definitely a capable option. 3 Hail Mary play, or sorry, extreme GPP plays today. Frankie Montas for Cincinnati is a cheap option against Colorado. Luis Severino for the Mets is a cheap option against Washington, and then Michael Lorenzen for Texas is an interesting play against the Angels, though he is a high risk play on the slate. As for the ownership on the slate, Pivetta, Valdez, Montes, and Bassett will be the top 4, followed by Myers, Severino, and Morton. And guys like Webb and Lorenzen are going to be low owned with some potential upside there. So that's kind of what I look at from a pitching perspective today. Let's go and look at our catchers. Now, this slate is going to be a very offensive heavy slate, I think. So it's going to be relatively high scoring from that perspective. So getting home runs and things is going to be very important today. Obviously, with pitching being the way it is, you probably don't want to pay up as much at pitching as you normally would necessarily because there's no super strikeout guys on the slate. So you can definitely pay up more for position players, hopefully, even though that it's still hard to get super cheap at the pitching position today. We'll start with Will Smith here at $5,800. He does have home run potential today. He's been fantastic lately with some really big games, but he definitely has high risk, high reward on the slate because of his price point. He's a really good play, though, so he's definitely one of my favorites. William Contreras also fits into that category. He's also been hitting the ball pretty well this season, though he does need a home run to pay off at this price point. My favorite value play for this slate, though, is Shea Langerlace. He's been fantastic from hitting home runs, and he's really been good lately hitting the ball. Despite the fact he has a 209 batting average for the season, he's really been hitting the ball well lately, and he's got a lot of good fantasy point games. I think today is another good opportunity. And then Yanir Diaz, he's kind of been a guy that you can kind of rely on to have a decent game occasionally. Not as much of a home run threat as some of the other guys mentioned, but he's a good contrarian play on this one. Top ownership at this position will be Will Smith, Connor Wong, and William Contreras. Low ownership upside guys, Francisco Alvarez, Jonah Heim, Sean Murphy, and Shea Langerlaze. I really did think about making Shea a core play, but I decided not to. But if anybody in Oakland's going to hit on run, he's probably got the most upside to do that. Let's look at first base here. So Bryce Harper does come off the as a really good home run hitter today. He's got a lot of upside. His price has actually come down a little bit from its peak, and that definitely gives us a little bit of potential here. But he's definitely a high risk, high reward play. If you can fit him in, though, he's definitely in play. Matt Olson has also increased his hitting lately, and I do think he draws some home run metrics today as well. I think he's been really good against Arizona this season, so he's got a lot of upside. Spencer Steer can play in the outfield as well as first base, and he does draw some good home run upside today. He's also, he has more home run upside at home than on the road, so he's definitely in play on the slate. Pete Alonso, Jameer Candelario, and Raish Hoskins are all in play as well. Looking at Candelario, though, he just looks absolutely fantastic for this particular game. He's been hitting the ball pretty well. He hadn't had a home run in a couple weeks, but he does draw really good home run metrics today, and I think he's one of my favorite plays at this position, and he's a core play for me. He's going to be decently high owned as well, because the ownership here, Spencer Steer, J.D. Martinez, Jameer Candelario, and then Paul Goldschmidt. The low-owned upside options at this position, Nate Lowe, Matt Olson, and Ohtani, so do keep that in mind. Looking at second base, this position is pretty top-heavy with Altuve and Albies at the top, so Altuve does look really solid today. He's hit the ball pretty well all season, though he hasn't had a home run in several games. He does draw that potential today, and he's priced pretty fair. Albies has really improved recently, so that's really good. And he has a lot of upside in this matchup, though he's fairly expensive. Jonathan India is a guy that I really considered a lot here, but he is day-to-day, so we want to make sure that he plays before obviously utilizing him. But he has been good against Colorado this season, and he does draw good metrics for this particular game. But Zach Geloff is also a nice cheap play for Oakland today. I do think Oakland's going to be a favorable team again, and he had an absolutely monster game yesterday. He's been pretty solid at certain situations, and today his matchup against Pivetta is also pretty decent. So the top ownership at this position, India, Albies, Heria, Romy Gonzalez, and Marcus Semien. The low-owned upside options, Jose Iglesias and Jose Altuve. So that's what we have there. Let's look at third base here. Alex Bregman is going to be my core play here at $4,200. He's been really solid in certain situations throughout the season, and he looks really good today. His last game against Miami, his first game this season against Miami was a home run yesterday. I look for him to try to do that again today. He's got really good metrics today and has a lot of upside. Austin Riley also looks pretty solid for Atlanta. He is a little bit more expensive than I like him to be, but he does have that home run metrics today, so he's definitely in play on the slate. I also think Ryan McMahon looks pretty good for Colorado, though he is kind of a one-off here. He has been inconsistent recently, which he has been pretty good most of the season, but he does have home run upside in the slate, especially being in Cincinnati. Then we'll look at Marte for Cincinnati at $3,400. He does draw some interesting upside today, though he has struggled this season. He hadn't played very many games yet, but he does draw some good home run metrics, and he's dirt cheap, so he definitely helps you pay up at other positions if you want. Mark Vientos also looks absolutely fantastic for the Mets today. The Mets have struggled this season, but they've had a couple of guys that look really good in certain situations, and he's one of them. So I do like him a lot here. And then this position, Rafael Devers, obviously at the top, is super expensive today, but he does draw that home run metrics as well, though he doesn't have as good of metrics as he normally does. Novelli, Marte, and Alex Bregman are going to be top ownerships guys, but Bregman's super easy today. He's relatively safe and has a lot of good upside. The low-owned upside options, Austin Riley, Jose Iglesias, and Josh Smith. Looking at shortstop, Corey Seager has been really good several games lately, and he does draw really good metrics again today. They ended up walking him yesterday, so that kind of limited his fantasy potential, but he definitely has that upside on the slate, so he's definitely worth a look. Francisco Lindor is very similar priced, and he does draw home run metrics as well. He's also been one guy for the Mets who has been pretty good, streaky but good the last few weeks, and so I do like his upside here as well. Uh, there's not this position is relatively weak, and so I think trying to get one of those guys in there is going to be the way to go. Uh, but Corey Seager, Francisco Lindor, and also Romy Gonzalez can be top ownership. The low owned upside guys, Ella De La Cruz and Josh Smith on this particular slate. Looking at outfielders, Rob Ref Snyder is my top overall play at this position. Now he has struggled at times this season. He's not a huge home run guy, but he does have good hitting metrics when he starts, and I think he's going to be a good play on the slate. And so I definitely like him a lot. But it's the top expensive options here: Jordan Alvarez from Houston, Kyle Schwarber for Philly, Toscar Hernandez for the Dodgers here, and then also Corbin Carroll for Arizona. Those are my top, 4,900 and above guys. Tyler O'Neill and Spencer Steer also play in here as they have really good upside in this matchup. But looking at the value plays, Blade for Oakland, also Rob Ref Snyder, and then Adolis Garcia for Texas. Those three guys are probably my favorite, just, good options on the slate. But Jock Peterson and Brandon Marsh also look solid today as good contrarian plays on this one, so they're definitely worth a look. And a couple kind of cheaper options that you can utilize as good plays. Reese Hines, he's played 2 games. He's had 2 home runs. Not to think that he's going to be able to continue that, but he definitely has that metrics today. Again, Jared Kalenic also looks very, very good as a kind of a good value play for Atlanta. Austin Slater is a good one-off for San Francisco if you want to utilize somebody from them. And then JD Martinez for the Mets. He can play first base or the outfield. Now, he's a little bit more expensive, but he definitely draws that potential. As for the ownership today, Toscar Hernandez, Jordan Alvarez, Rob Ref Snyder, Spencer Steer, JD Martinez, and Jared Kalenic. The top plays, the next group here, Tyler O'Neill, Reese Hines, Andy Pages, Charlie Blackmon, Adam Duvall, and Wyatt Langford have upside, but are going to be a little bit riskier. And the low-owned upside guys, Travis Jankowski, Adolis Garcia, Otani, Leody Taveras are my favorite plays from that perspective. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, comment,